Welcome everybody to the newest edition of the .NET Foundation's Project Spotlight. I'm pleased to have Mitchel Sellers from DNN, the artist formerly known as .NET Nuke. Mitchell, if you want to say hello, introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mitchel Sellers. I am the technology lead for the .NET Nuke or DNN platform project. And excited to be here.
Awesome. So let's just get right into it. So as a .NET developer or even somebody who's a member of the .NET Foundation and might not know what DNN or even before when .NET Nuke is, can you just give us a brief intro to what DNN is and what value it provides for .NET developers?
Yeah, the best way to think about it is, .NET Nuke is a CMS platform built on .NET that allows developers to rapidly build applications that need some content management functionality. But it's also been formally, marketed as an application development framework, right? With users, roles, security, page management, URL redirects, those kinds of things. It's a tool that can be used by developers to, more quickly develop solutions at lower cost, while giving administrative users or regular content editor users the ability to manage content on the pages.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. So obviously in the .NET ecosystem, you mentioned content management system CMS, so there are a few of them out there, right? So what is the differentiator for DNN versus some of the other, well-known CMSs?
So the biggest differentiator with .NET Nuke or DNN is that we are the largest open source .NET CMS that we're aware of that is out there. The project has been around since it was originally iBuySpy portal way back in 2002, I believe. So we've seen a lot of growth. We have a very passionate development community. So we have a lot of maintenance. We're doing regular releases and we're moving that project forward. There are other platforms out there. However, again, we don't have any license fees. We're as part of the .NET Foundation, and we're totally free to utilize and to be able to extend. We have great extension points for almost all of the various pieces of functionalities, so that if you don't like the way that authentication works, you can swap it out with something else. You don't like the way that other features work, we can work with that, and we're continually evolving to bring the project further and further forward with technology. And it's really that growth and adaptability that makes us a very powerful tool set for developers.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I think one of the things that you called out that I think is very important is you mentioned the largest .NET open source .NET CMS, right? So obviously, being in the open, I'd imagine that there are tons of contributors to this project, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about the project maintainer team and then talk about community contribution?
Yes, so we are, as you mentioned, we have a very broad base. We have a really broad base of individuals that are active using the platform, and that you start to see a little bit of a funnel from those that are actively using it to those that are contributing issues to those that are developing, and then we have our core group of maintainers. We've organized ourselves into a group of 4 lead maintainers, or team leads, if you will. I am the team lead over the technology side, so I'm in charge of working with things for our release pipelines. Our security is also overseen by myself, and some of the higher level stuff there with getting things out the door, making sure our NuGet packages are published, making sure that all of that's done. We also have a strategy lead, which is helping us kind of form some of our future strategy. We have a developer lead, which is focused on developer experience, improving, getting started for new developers, getting started for those that are new contributors. And then we have an awareness lead that's really there to help us better project ourselves as a project on what we can do, how we can get help for people, managing website blogs, those kinds of things to really help some of that outreach. And then underneath there, we have, a bunch of other contributors that are helping us manage those processes. But we have those 4 key resources in our administration team on the open source side.
Awesome. So definitely sounds like a lot to bite off is one of the leads that you said. So one of the things that I love talking about when I talk about open source communities is just how you get started, right? So say I'm a developer and I've been using DNN for a little bit, but I feel like there's one area that I can definitely give back. Whether that be building documentation or testing or developing. So how would I get started actually being a contributor to DNN?
So our contributing process is quite easy. We are a member of the .NET Foundation, so any contribution, one of the things that throws people for a loop is we do have the CLA license bot when you go and actually submit your thing. So we don't want to forget about that. But really, we keep our process simple where we'd like to see an issue documented with what is going to be contributed from a developer perspective. So if it's a programming change, a database change, something like that, an issue being created in the main repository, so that we know what's coming in. And it's also really nice if you're planning to actually resolve the issue to make a note in that initial submission. Hey, I'm going to fix this. If you're new and want to get started, we also have a number of issues that exist already that have been tagged by complexity. So future minor, future major, future revision to kind of tag, okay, if it's a major item, it's something that's going to be breaking, change, more involved. And then same thing with minor and revision, right? To get less complex. So if you don't know what you want to fix, that's a great way to get a pool of what's out there. And then other than that, it's really getting the fix contributed, get the pull request done. We try to review our pull requests as quick as we can. We do have documented procedures on contributing linked directly from the main repo in GitHub. We have a documented process with our reviewers where we require 2 reviewers from our core group of reviewers when there's a total of 6 of us today. So 2 of the 6 have to review and approve. And then the only other big thing that we always warn people is if you submit something for a major release and we're not ready for the major release, we're going to receive your pull request. We're going to approve your pull request, but we are going to throw an on hold tag on it and not merge it until we're closer to that major release. We're not ignoring anybody, but we try to do everything we can to communicate it well. On the documentation side, our documentation repo, similar processes are followed there as well. But there's a little bit less of a requirement on some of the documentation of actually creating an issue before you create the PR for those contributions.
That's awesome. So one of the things is somebody who likes to contribute to open source projects in the .NET ecosystem is having I definitely don't want to be somebody that has to scrounge through GitHub issues to try to find something that I might be interested in. It sounds to me like you have a very organized process for, you said different levels of severity and things like that. So that's great. One of the things that's also interesting to me is how you got started as a part of DNN, right? So, as one of the main maintainers, I'd imagine you started out probably as a user and then you kind of matriculated up because you had interest and to eventually where you are now. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started with DNN years ago, 12, 13 years ago, really. And exactly that. I actually was forced into using it for a job when I was working at Wells Fargo. They're like, hey, you're in charge of maintaining this thing. I'm like, no, this is kind of cool. This was in the early 2x, 3x days. We're currently on 9, soon to be 9.8. And, I got started to use it. Then I was working with, a boss was like, hey, you have any desire to go to conferences and technology events? Sure, you guys are paying. That led to, there's a .NET Nuke event, which was back in the day was paired with Dev Connections. I had done some kind of cool stuff with work, so I submitted a session topic. So then I started talking about doing things with DNN, and then I started using some projects that were ancillary that had kind of fallen off with support. I'm like, hey, I'll step in and kind of help. So I started maintaining the documents module that was an extension within DNN years ago. And then ever since then, I kind of moved forward, been active with the community. I'm also the board member on DNN Association, where we put on the yearly US-based event for DNN platform users. And over time, our project has a little bit of a storied history on the open source side, where for a number of years, the open source project was actually controlled by the entity that has a commercial interest in the product as well. And about 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago now, they went under new ownership and kind of went to give it back to the community. And my name, along with those of the others, kind of came together as ones that would help shepherd this forward based on our activity and historical involvement. And now we're here. Sometimes I have way too much time to dedicate, apparently, but it's for good and we've done amazing things as an open source project, especially where we had a big lack, right? We had a time place where people couldn't trust us, and that's been our hardest bit, really. It's not even getting started. It wasn't even me getting started in the beginning. It's now that we are truly open source again, we have the support of the .NET Foundation. It's getting people to understand we will accept your contributions. I promise we will. And a lot of that interest had been lost. And so that for us as leaders has been the hardest thing to overcome.
That's awesome. Like, I think just the fact that, you specifically say, if you want to contribute, we want your contribution. We want to help shepherd you all the way around. That doesn't mean that you're going to accept every PR that gets submitted. But it does mean that if you put thought in how you're going to contribute and what you're going to contribute, the team is definitely going to help you in every step of the way, which I think is amazing. And I think that's just a great opportunity for people that want to come and provide new insights or new experiences to DNN, like that it's welcome. So awesome. One of the things that's you mentioned that was interesting to me is that you mentioned that you're on version 9 of DNN, right? So obviously in the open source community, getting to version 9 it seems like it's almost an impossible feat, right? Like, 9 iterations, major iterations of a tool set is pretty impressive. So when obviously there's going to be a version 10 and 11 and what have you in the future, right? So when you look to build new modules or new extensions to the platform that would require a major release, what are some of the things that you consider when you're going through that strategy process?
So we have recently employed a different strategy. So we took back over from a community perspective shortly after the 9.2.2 release, and we're currently we will be releasing 9.8.0 release candidate later on this week. And we took over after what everyone kind of refers to as that release that we all don't want to deal with again, where breaking changes were released in a non-major version. So we took a step back and looked at the way that we're versioning, the way that we're releasing, and really adopted the whole major minor revision mantra to try to use that to guide where we're going, to where we have a version 10 that we are going to be ready to release, but we have a certain milestone that we wanted to hit on the 9.x series before we get to 10. Because what we understand is that it's easier for people to upgrade with minor releases and revision releases where we're not introducing breaking changes. We're maybe bumping up dependency versions. We're adding new functionality, but we're adding new functionality in a non-breaking manner. So that's our current emphasis, is to make sure that we get the project as far as we can. And we have a security and stability milestone. That's what's actually holding us back from going to a 10x release. We have a goal of an optional security compliance thing that we want with 9. And we're actually going to be able to achieve that with 9.8.0 with the release candidate when it comes out. Once we get there, right, then we can go to 10. And what we've been trying to do with that is we are evolving and we will be having breaking changes. But we also understand that our users have been around for a long time, right? We have people that have upgraded from 3x, from 4x. So we're talking about websites that have been in existence for 5, 10 plus years, right? We have people that have spent literally millions of dollars on custom development on single applications that are built on kind of new. So we want to be able to give people the most secure platform possible using the minor and revision releases. But then we want to be able to be as nimble as we can to move forward into new technology. And that's what we've been using as our current dividing line. So we've been adding dependency injection support, for example, in a non-breaking manner in 9.x. So for those that want to be able to do things with modern technologies, they can. But then when we get to 10x, we're going to make it a requirement. So it's going to be a breaking change for some of those older modules, but we're going to leave people at a place with 9.x where they're able to be secure and have all of the latest bug fixes and everything that we have before we make that launch point with a breaking change.
That's awesome. And one thing that I do want to call out is that you mentioned a release coming soon, right? And you mentioned next week. So for folks that are coming to this not in the next week or so, like, what is the date of that?
We are doing a release candidate the week of October 5th. Traditionally, our release candidates are out there for 2 weeks, assuming that no issues are found before they become a real release. Um, Full disclosure, we anticipate that this release candidate will take longer. We are replacing in this release the file manager, which is one of the biggest underpinning components that's utilized in the platform, and currently has a dependency on a 2013 version of Teller, which we all know is not a good thing. With this release, we will have a file manager replacement that will be optional. That if you switch to it, you'll be able to uninstall Teller. By doing so, that will resolve security vulnerabilities. So it's a really big release for us. Replacing one of the extension within the platform that may have been used by different ways. So I would anticipate our cycles maybe a little bit longer this distance.
Awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Everybody's done it, right? Where you have a dependency that you keep looking at, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a challenge, right? It's great to hear that you had a similar experience and you were able to overcome it. So kudos to that. So as we wrap up, one of the things I want people to be very clear of is that DNN is a part of the .NET Foundation, and the .NET Foundation has multiple different avenues for projects to take advantage of, right? So one of the things, and I don't know if you were a part of the team that came in to bring DNN to the .NET Foundation, but do you maybe want to talk about one of the decision-making points that led you to join the .NET Foundation?
Yeah, so I was involved shortly thereafter the project actually joined in. I have been a candidate for the .NET Foundation board as well. So I'm really keen in what the .NET Foundation can do for the projects. But as a project leader, really, we would not be where we are today if it weren't for the .NET Foundation. The support that we get from a project perspective, Azure DevOps, we have an update service that we use to notify people of new versions. We use that to also distribute localized content for those in other languages. All of that is being executed on resources that were provided to us by the .NET Foundation, as well as continued pushing for us to improve our processes to be more secure, and those kinds of things. We have a lot of great support from the .NET Foundation, and also it gives us a means to be able to clean up some of the things that we had before. We have some rogue accounts, for example, that we've needed to exercise some assistance, not only from the .NET Foundation. I'm an MVP as well, and we've literally had to chase people down to clean some of this up. And it's been amazing having that support, because I'm a leader today. The rest of our leaders are a leader today, but this project will continue on. And the .NET Foundation, by having the project contributed to the foundation, by having the resources provided by the foundation, we have a level of assistance that's beyond our current leadership that allows us to be able to continue this project forward. Our end users, right, are able to be convinced, right, that project will be able to continue. And it's even some of the little things, right, the CLA pods that make sure that we get license agreements from everybody that contributes to our repository. Huge for us. And it's also huge for the end users from an identification perspective and knowing that they can trust that product that they're using. So we would not be where we are today if it wasn't for the .NET Foundation.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear, you say that the .NET Foundation has been extremely beneficial for you as a project maintainer. And just to call out, the .NET Foundation would not exist without amazing projects like DNN, as well as amazing contributors to those projects like you. So thank you for that. So we're going to wrap up, and I want to just say thank you to Mitchel for coming on and chatting with us. And, Mitchel, do you have anything parting to say?
Nothing more than, whatever project it is that you believe in, right? Contribute. But contributing to those projects can be anything. It can be submitting issues. It can be testing a release. It can be contributing code. It can be supporting developers on GitHub sponsors, right? We have a small group of core maintainers that are ridiculously passionate for some unknown reason for our project sometimes. But anything to give back to those that are giving into these projects so much, that's what keeps us going as maintainers. That's what keeps these projects going forward. And I cannot encourage it enough. Get involved in whatever capacity it is that you can do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time, Mitchell, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you, everybody, for taking a look at this iteration of Project Spotlight, DNN. Thank you.